Welcome to this Critics Talk. I'm Koen van Zwol from NRC Handelsblad, and this line is a little bit short, but yeah, maybe so. That might help. Yeah, thanks. I would like to start this session with a little bit of Bible reading. Doesn't happen enough nowadays. Samuel 11, part 2. And it came to pass in an eventide that David arose from off his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent to inquire after the woman, and one said, "Is it not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" And the woman sent messages, and David sent messages, and took her. And she came unto him, and he lay with her, for she was purified from her uncleanness, and she returned unto her house. So, I guess your movie started with Samuel 11, no?
Yes, in some way. I mean, not by reading the Bible myself, but more or less by having been told biblical stories as a kid. And that was one of the stories that always remained with me. Please, if you want to sit, there are more places. It's really possible. Thank you. It's fantastical chairs, very comfortable. No, but really, I was raised Catholic, so to speak, and I'm not anymore. But the stories stayed with me, and that was one starting point of the film. That some powerful guy, David, would use his power to realize his love, or that's what he thinks he is, and by sending the husband of the desired one to the front. That's the basic biblical story. Now, I think it's very, very much up to date. And now the question was how to bring that alive today, and what's power today, and that's where we started.
So this movie actually started with this basic motive, David and Bathsheba, Uriah being sent to his death. But it also feels like you try to portray the banker's world.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm not... I didn't try to make a biblical film. I didn't film David's story. It's just a starting point for me. For me, it's always useful to have... for example, my first film started with the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel. So I quite often use old stories. And now the question was, who is king today? And who is... our assessment was... that in the financial industry there's a lot of power in it, and that this power is especially modern. And that's how we chose that word long before the crisis hit and everyone was talking about that word. So we started to research and we talked to a lot of managers and try to understand a little bit of how this world works and what our story would look like in a world like that.
We recently had in Holland quite a great little movie, Win-Win, which is also in the world of share trading. If you research in it, it's very conspicuous that there are not many movies set in the banking world or the financial world. Why is it? You always end up with Wall Street and 2 other titles, and that's it. Why is that?
Well, I think there's a big deficit in modern cinema to describe what's really driving our economies, our societies. You won't find much work in films. You basically have middle class boy meets girl plots most of the time. And nothing against it. That can be useful, powerful, wonderful. But I, for one, have the desire to see also the more complex parts of our world portrayed. Because I think we need images, we need stories, characters to talk about things that are like part of our world. I mean, most of us spend a lot of time in front of computers in offices and so on. And that is that time in terms of storytelling. I mean, most of the stories are in the spare time, and people have no money needs, and so I think it's important to look at these parts of the world. And so...
Well, some of the critics, when they're talking about the banking, about this movie, they say like, well, the financial world, it's about huge impersonal forces. You cannot summarize them in personal stories anymore. I think a lot of bankers would be glad with this assessment because they're free of moral obligations then. But is this some kind of abstract art, this banking world?
Well, I mean, what's true is that it's quite difficult to find a narrative that is like that you are able to put into 2 hours or less, that is sensual enough that you can grasp what's actually happening. Because, of course, lots of the dealings are quite complicated. And for example. One of the most important, the key hires in modern banking are mathematicians who would calculate derivative business with, I mean, they have formulas, books like this, you know, full of calculations to be able to assess how profitable a certain financial product is. So, of course, I can't film that book. Yes, so I have to find a way to talk about the people. I mean, I'm actually not so much interested about that book, I full of calculations. I'm interested in the effects of that book on my relationship, and I think the way bankers deal with the world has had a great influence on how we think about the world, and it still has. And because it's basically it's storytelling. I mean, what a banker does is not so different from what I do. He says everything is going to be fine. He says you will make a profit, and he says we have the wonderful weapon to go with to find happiness and you know and so on. It's all basically they're in the business of telling fairy tales. And trouble is when people stop to believe them, because then you have a flop or a crisis, you know.
So a flop movie is the same as a crisis in a sense. People don't believe the story anymore, that they're going to profit.
Yeah, people sense that there is fake, you know. They don't need to believe that anymore. Yeah, absolutely, there's a relation. I mean, I don't want to say it's the same thing, but there's absolutely a relation. And when you stop believing that a certain, for example, I mean, a big part of the Dutch economy is driven by real estate speculation. If you stop believe that a certain area is going to be hip, rich, cool, whatever, then the whole speculation development is going down, and the story fails. So it's really about stories, and when I say about stories, that means also who defines what's real. I mean, what are the facts that really count? So. But maybe that's a bit abstract.
Yeah, let's go. No, well, it's interesting, but let's go over to this the central character, Roland Cordes. In the beginning, you say you know he tries to fulfill his love, but is it love for this woman or is it greed?
Well, I think it's neither. I mean, I think he tries to love. But in one crucial moment in the film, he says, "Well, I wanted to talk about love, but I can't believe myself, you know." And that I think shows that in this world, and which is pretty much our world, it's about performances and not about what you think, but what you're believed to be, you know. And if you are as a performer can't perform love, then that's bad. So that's the one part. I don't think it can be summed up as greed, that he's just want to buy her, you know. I think what's attractive for him in seeing this woman is that she seems to be priceless, meaning that you can't really know who she is, so you can't really own her, and that's provocative, I think.
That's a very romantic take. of yours, I would say.
Yes, why not? I'm a romantic in many ways.
Going over to this character of Svenja, what is he looking in Roland Cordes? If you're cynical, you say it's power. If you're romantic?
Well, I think, first of all, they seem to have something in common, which is they are both players, they play life. They are... they have this potential to do the opposite of what they are doing in this particular moment. And that potential is dangerous and thrilling, I think. If I see someone, and that's absolutely my feeling towards people, if I see someone, for example, an actor or some other guy, and I see that something could happen, something unexpected, then I'm beginning to be interested. I think that's the most fantastic thing in life, that people are unpredictable, that you can't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, power is unpredictability.
Absolutely. I mean, at least a big part. I mean, the most boring part of power is I say so and then it happens, you know. Mm-hmm. But the most interesting in power is that nobody knows what's going to happen, because I don't know it myself.
But what is he looking for in Mr. Roland Cordes, the master of the universe?
Well, I think I can't really explain my film, but I think no, I mean, because it's you do it, you write it, you direct it, and a lot of things remain mysteries. For me too. I mean, I'm actually, that's my point of view in life. I think we are surrounded by mystery, and there are only islands of things we understand. And well, you can face it and say, "Hello, mystery. I like you," or you can try to avoid